Given a new dataset, the machine learning scientist will work on developing a number of models or variations of a model to solve the problem. The question here is how to validate these models, how to quantify their expected error, and how to compare several models. And there are several aspects in the validation of machine learning models. On one hand, we want to assess the expected error of a learner. And the thing with the learner is that you obviously optimize it on the training dataset. But on the other hand, you would like to estimate its expected error on some kind of unseen real-life dataset. And so the question is whether we can somehow estimate its expected error in this way. And the solution here is that you will have to keep a part of your data set separately just for this purpose of estimating its expected error on real-life data set. So there is this idea that there will be a separation between the training data set where you optimize your learner and a separate part that you only keep for testing purposes to estimate this error. Another aspect is that you will have to compare several learners. We will always have two or more different learners, and they can be fundamentally different models, or they can be models with a different selection of the hyperparameters. And all these learners, you are going to optimize them individually on the training dataset, and then you will want to somehow compare them and choose one and then drop the other ones. So you will have to compare their expected error again on some sort of unseen real-life dataset which is separate from this training dataset. But the problem here is quite different than the problem here, because this part here is somehow part of your model selection process and model training process. Based on what you see here, you are going to select some model and drop others, and for that one that you select, you might want to refine and explore further some of its hyperparameters. The point being that once you have the final model, all of these data points that you've tested on in this part here, they have contributed to selecting this final model. So then the idea is that this is going to be made of a so-called validation set, whereas we are talking here about the training set. So the thing with the validation set, again, the idea is that you are training the competing learners on the training data set, and you are comparing their performance on the validation set. And the test set, the idea is that you only have it for using it just once at the end for estimating the expected error of your final model. And in this whole process of design and analysis of machine learning models, there are these big steps, and they can be very time consuming, and there are iterations that you might do between these stages. But there are these three main stages. On one hand, you have the data analytics stage. And in this stage, you are going to analyze your data set to check for incompleteness on the data. You will want to check on outliers. You will want to check on the statistical distribution of your data. You will want maybe to experiment with encodings of different types of your data. You might have different data sets that you will need to integrate somehow. You might want to do feature selection, drop some features that are irrelevant for your problems. And then you will also have to think about the stratification of your data. How is it distributed between different categories of data? And also in here, there is this part where you will have to think about how to split your data set between train, validation, and test subsets. And then you have this stage of the model design. And in this stage, you are going to choose a number of different machine learning architectures, and you are going to train a diversity of learners on the training set. And they could be learners, again, of very different types. Maybe some of them are, deep learning models. Some of them are linear regression models. Maybe some others are support vector machines, and maybe some other architectures. But you could also have the same architecture and, for example, a deep learning model that you are testing with a different number of hidden layers or with a different number of hidden units in the hidden layers. But the point is that you are going to train this diversity of learners on the training data set, and you are going to estimate their performance on the validation set. And those who are inferior are going to get dropped, and those who are superior maybe you get to refine them further and try to optimize them even further. And you will iterate this this sort of work until a sort of a final model is selected. And then this is also one important point, that the validation set is part of your training stage. So once you are ready, to report what the final model is, you can have a final training of this ultimate model on both train and validation. And then, you go to the deployment stage, and you are going to estimate the performance of the final model on the test data. And also you will have to set up the deployment environment. And so that means that you will have to think about input-output in your data. How does it communicate with some other modules in your pipeline? And you will also have to make sure that all of these data transformations that you have done pre-model are also done in the deployment phase.